Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to our synthesizer neighborhood. Won't you be my neighbor?
Not if you're going to sound like that.
This is my neighbor, Carlos.
How y'all doing out there?
And I'm Sam. And we're from Syntaur, syntaur.com. Place to get all your synthesizers, synthesizer parts, and assorted craziness. And this is Talking Synths, and we've got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
Some big stuff happening at Syntaur. So let's jump right in. Let's see, which do we talk about first? I'll start with what's in front of me. You may have heard by now, this is the Korg miniKORG FS, which is a recreation. This is fun to say. This is Korg's latest synthesizer. It's a recreation of their very first synthesizer from back in 1973, the miniKORG 700. And they actually recreated the 700S model, which has good stuff on the left-hand panel. The regular 700 is blank here. And this one adds a second oscillator. This was the keyboard that was used by Greg Hawkes of the Cars a lot to do his little monophonic synth lines that I love so much. And boy, it's fun. It's a neat recreation. It looks almost exactly like the original. Well, it looks exactly like the original except for the added stuff. And I'll kind of just dash through those real quick. And we actually have a video out on this, so that'll give you all the details much better. But the key bed is much better than those old key beds. It's got aftertouch. You got a joystick here, which is a lot of fun to play. Pitch bend in each direction and modulation in each direction. It's got an arpeggiator on it. It's got a spring reverb, which is really cool. And this is what really struck me about Korg's recreation of this and the ARP 2600. They chose an iconic instrument, and when you start reproducing that, I can imagine how easy it is to say, you know, we could add another oscillator on this. Yeah. We could make the filter even bigger and ballsier, and we could add an ashtray and a drink holder, and then before long you're nowhere close to the.
I think the technical name for it is feature creep.
Yeah.
Where those little features, little niceties start creeping in, and then before you know it, you're so far removed from the original idea or the original essence of what the synthesizer was meant to be.
Yeah. And Korg really, I hate to say hit it out of the park, that's kind of trite, but they did such a thoughtful job is the good word I like of recreating these, where everything about the original is there, down to the exact analog circuitry. And in fact, the guy that designed the reissue is the guy that designed the original Korg FS. And he still works for Korg 50 years later. That tells you something right there. That's really cool. But so it has every bit of the character and every bit of the features and the exact same response and everything of the original. So it's like playing the original, but you get the better keyboard. You get USB MIDI. You get a spring reverb, which if you're gonna let's say, oh, it'd be easy to add effects to that. Let's make a digital multi-effects or whatever. But this is from the 70s, and they added a spring reverb, so it's like
I wonder how much of that was if they had spring reverbs left over from the 2600 full size. Yeah.
Well, they didn't make too many of either of those.
Yeah.
They made 400 of the 2600s. I'm not sure of the exact number of these, but it seems like these are even tighter than the 2600s. So yeah, we only get a very small number of these, and
single digits.
Yeah, and we're getting half of what the whole territory gets. So there are not many of them.
Yeah.
And by the time you see this, if you want one, I don't know if we'll have any left or not. So. Anyway, but it's a really cool recreation. I love that it has an arpeggiator in it, and I guess the unique thing about this synthesizer is the traveler instead of the filter. And what that is double sliders that, and the knobs actually kind of lock together, so you can work them both at once. The top slider is a low pass filter, the bottom is a high pass filter, and so you sweep them both at once, and you get a band pass filter sweep, which is really neat. And I'll just do it right now. Let me pull up another sound. Wow. So it's really cool to be able to do those band pass filter sweeps, and yeah, I've had a lot of fun with this. It's a neat machine. We got one a little bit early and to make the video, and I get to play with it, and yeah, really having fun with it. It's just what I needed. Put it in the words of the Cars.
I would say one of the things that I was really taken by when we unboxed it was the case, the hard shell case that's included, that's form fitted, because it's like, man, I mean, for something, you know, this nice, you obviously wanted to keep it nice, but if you wanted to gig with it, that carrying case is just, it's perfect. You know?
And that got me thinking. I remember we had a Delta, I think maybe, that had a carrying case like that from the original. Was that kind of standard with a lot of Korg products?
Well,
because you hardly ever see them these days.
I know it was for the Delta. For the Delta, it's almost got like that retro tweed look to it. Yeah.
So I don't know if Korg offered that, or if you bought an original Delta, did you get that? If you bought a Lambda, did you get that? I don't think you did with a Poly 6 or whatever. So.
Yeah, and the Lambda's pretty big on its own too.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, but it's rare to see those cases these days, and to get this in a neat case like that is that's really cool. Yeah. So yeah, this is great. I love it. I'll just play Arpeggiator just for a second. Let's see. Got to do this, and then sweeping that filter with the Arpeggiator going. Love that. Anyway, let me do it with the spring reverb.
Now, do you get the option of like changing patterns on the Arpeggiator? Can you select it to go multiple octaves?
I think it just arpeggiates whatever you hold down on the keyboard, but I haven't dived in deep enough to be the world's expert on that yet. But just in my bit of playing with it, that's how it works.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, check out the video we did with it, and yeah, it's a really cool little keyboard. And now you're sitting there with an E-mu something or another.
Yeah, this is my purple people eater.
And what's the significance of E-mu today?
Oh, the E-mu is very significant. It encompasses a lot of things. I think it's a company that has a very rich history. They've done a lot for musicians all over the world, and kind of really even just spurred on the creation of genres. You know, when you think of the SP12 and the SP1200, and I think here at Syntaur, we're very proud to say that we've acquired a very large piece of that history.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And I think the story goes like this. At some point, E-mu, when you needed to send your, if you had something that needed repair, for instance, you call E-mu and you'd send it back to them and they'd repair it. Well, they decided, okay, we're going to pass that off to someone else. And we're going to pass off all the parts end of that to them as well. And so there was a company called EPR Electronics, Richard Bruin, who ran that company for a long time. He took
over 30 years?
43 total. 43. So he was the guy, he was like the top E-mu service center, and they worked out a deal where E-mu said, okay, you take all the part stock, and you do all the factory service work. And so they did that. And so Rich's company, EPR Electronics, became that service end of E-mu. And now Rich has retired and reached out to us and said, I'm going to retire, but I want to make sure that E-mu customers can still get the parts they need and all that kind of stuff. So he reached out to us to see if we wanted to work a deal, and we did. And so now we have, now Syntaur has acquired EPR Electronics and all their inventory. And so we're busy. We
kind of foolishly thought that we could all pack it into well, and this was actually the first time I believe we've taken a trailer. Yeah. You know, we got the largest U-Haul trailer that we could get. We got in the Synthmobile, hit the road, and
got about half of it.
Yeah, got about half of it. But we tried. Yeah. So Sam and Mary will be making a round 2 trip very soon.
Yeah. And yeah, it's exciting to get all that inventory and lots of parts for things like these.
Yeah. So the parts that we acquired kind of span the whole range, the whole timeline of the E-mu products, but mainly really focus on the late 90s and early 2000s. Things like the command stations, the PK6, the XK6, the E-series samplers, which are just fantastic sounding instruments in my opinion. And I know I've been kind of championing the return of the Rompler. I don't think it'll happen. But you know, I
keep working on it.
Yeah, maybe it will. You know, I think, you know, memory is so cheap these days. It's why not. And I think it's also one of those things of limitation breeds creativity. Yeah. So, yeah, I think one of the downsides of the Rompler is you're kind of stuck with the sounds that the engineers and the product designers decided to put into the instruments. But on the flip side of that, you know, what you have are very carefully selected waveforms and samples. Yeah. So this one is actually near and dear to my heart. This is an MP7 that I've had for a while now. It's missing its end caps, but now that we've acquired a large inventory, hopefully I'll be able to to get some end caps. And these are really unique instruments in the fact that, you know, they were kind of meant to be pitted up against the MPC, kind of that groove box workstation. And it's got a lot of things that I believe if you release this today in a modern day product, like people would go wild for it. And I think it's kind of one of those things that it had certain pitfalls that affected its success at the market. And it was also kind of a weird time at E-mu too. I think we're kind of thinking towards the creative requirement and when things were kind of on their way out. But 128 note polyphony, you know, 16 track sequencer. You get a lot of people, you know, really complain about modern day synthesizers not having, you know, one knob per function. But here you get a 4x4 grid matrix of knobs that are freely assignable. So you can really do a lot of editing from the front panel. And
you say they're assignable, but they're marked. I mean, I see filter, cut off.
Yeah, they're marked kind of what you would expect them to use. But then if you notice in the top left-hand corner, there's also 1A, 2B.
So you can change them.
Yeah, so once you go into the mod matrix, I can assign a knob A to whatever parameter I want. And this thing, believe it or not, it's a fully modular system. I mean, if you're come from the Eurorack world and you're used to patching cables, this has what are literally called cords. They're digital patch cables, where you can take point A and go to point B. If I wanted to, I could put, let's say, a diode in between the two in the cord that would only send positive values. So if I'm modulating it, it would ignore the negative values and keep the positive.
And they actually call that a diode?
Yeah, and they call it a diode.
It's interesting, because I wouldn't think most people would make that connection. But
so and that's just like one of those little things that just totally blew my mind. There's so much functionality in here. When you think of a modular system, you know, you always say it's the utilities that make it shine. And the mod matrix on this is so deep and has so many utilities that it just really, the sky's the limit. And with that being said, yeah, of course, you know, there's some downfalls as far as, you know, limited feedback from the display. You just have a 2-line bog standard display. There are, you know, modern day, you could edit this from a computer if you wanted to. There's patch programmers out there. If you've ever programmed a VFX, I think it's very similar to a VFX in which, you know how kind of each layer can be its own independent synthesizer.
Right.
This is the exact same thing, where each layer, you know, can have its own envelope, can have its own LFO. Per patch, I think you can have up to 8 LFOs, which are all MIDI syncable if you wanted to, and
cool.
that's on a single track.
Yeah. But does it sound good?
Yeah, so
Plays a note or two.
I'm not nearly the player that Sam is, but the thing that I enjoy about these command stations are the Z-plane filters, and they're filters that will cut and boost frequencies as you sweep the range. Now, going back to what I said, where each layer is its own synthesizer, just think about that. If I really wanted to, I could create a patch that's 16 layers, that is 16 different oscillators and 16 different filters.
And all sweeping in different
all
ways.
Sweeping,
yeah.
and so what I have right here is just a really simple, this is supposed to be like a Super JX, so it's a JX10 sampled waveform. And I have it layered 3 times, and there's just 3 different filters, one of them being a Z-plane, one of them being a 4-pole and a 6-pole filter. But the envelopes that are applied to the VCA and the filter are all the same. And it just will be a standard C3 note, but there's just so much movement that I really enjoy. And there's nothing.
Well, it doesn't play very loud, I'll say that.
Yeah. You got that? Where'd my sound go? Oh, there we go. Yeah.
You got a long attack on it or something? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I think so. There we go. So we'll try it one more time. And I just for me, there's just something that does it for me about that sound. You know, it's just cool. A single cycle waveform. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a PCM bass Rompler, and it's a very, very short sampled waveform, but having those filters that are moving in different directions really brings it to life.
Yeah.
And this thing can do microtonal. If you want to do microtonal, you're not stuck with equal temperament. You could even do user assignable temperaments. Probably has about 200 different arpeggiator patterns, and arpeggiated styles that are kind of genre specific. It's expandable.
And when did this come out?
1999, I believe.
Okay.
If memory serves me correct.
And I'm spotting some of the parts we got, like the, yeah. The little touch strip.
Yeah.
We got a nice supply of those. Is that to work the filter, or?
It's assignable.
Okay, whatever you want to do.
Whatever you want to assign it to. Let's see. So yeah, just, you know, a little pitch strip.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so we did get these pressure sensitive pads. You know, we got a whole slew of them that are basically new old stock. Knobs, potentiometers, encoders, which are very hard to come by. These buttons. We got a handful of end caps. And that's just for one range.
And what excites me about all those parts, all the parts we got, they go back even farther. There's been some really fun discoveries, like the little overlays for the Emulator 2 panel, at least the left-hand panel.
That are essentially factory.
Yeah.
I mean, they're factory.
This is all the original factory parts. We got slide pots for the drumulator. You know, some really classic old stuff. And man, there's just so much stuff.
We got some E3 stuff, which I'm really excited about.
We got some SP1200 stuff.
Got some SP1200 stuff. And so with all that being said, I know there's a lot of people who have kind of clamored for these parts for a very long time. You're just gonna have to be patient with us.
It's gonna take a lot of work to get all this into our inventory. A lot of it we already had in there, but might not have had a supply of those parts, and now we're supplied. But a lot of them, we got to take pictures and assign them part numbers and get them into our system and onto the site.
It's a lot of stuff, but it's exciting stuff. It's very exciting stuff. Yeah. I don't want to give away the juiciest bits quite yet, because you know, there's definitely items that they're just unobtainium, but will have to be tested first.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the other part of this is sorting through what is in working condition and what isn't. So it's just, I mean, you're talking, well, even when we were loading it up, you know, Rich basically said we were taking 40 years worth of tech with us.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a lot of stuff. But definitely something that's going to work in our favor is that Rich was a very, how would you say it? He was just a very organized person. You know, everything's labeled, everything's bagged. So it's just a matter of like going through the database and seeing, you know, what parts go to what instruments, and yeah.
Yeah, he was a great guy to take this stuff over from, and he's still going to be around for us to, you know, ask questions and whatever. So I know it was real important to Rich that this transition happens to where in a way that people can still have access to parts and stuff, and then B, he wants to make it as painless as possible.
Yeah.
So he's definitely there if we get some stuff and say, what the heck is this? Well let's call Rich and ask him. And,
yeah. Oh, he's going to be getting some late night calls from me. I already. I mean, just as a synth nerd, you know, there were certain things that I saw that just kind of blew my mind. So you know, I don't want to jump the gun and assume that these things work, but hopefully we'll be able to help a lot of instruments out there and get them singing again. And if not, I mean, Rich is the guy that will at least have the information to be like, oh, well, you know what, this is what usually goes wrong, or this is something you need to be watchful for or look out for. Yeah. So yeah, it's just exciting all the way around.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's cool to throw some E-mu out there and know that we're really going to be boosting up our parts inventory and helping a lot of people out with that.
I think we'll probably double our parts inventory. Yeah, it's just the quantity of stuff was overwhelming, but overwhelming in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, big thumbs up to Rich and EPR and all these new E-mu parts.
Yeah.
Big thumbs up to Korg for the 700FS miniKORG. Really a cool toy. And yeah, if you haven't seen the other video we made of this, check it out on our YouTube channel.
And I did have one more interesting bit of I guess non-synthesizer related news that I wanted to share with everyone. I'm going to be a dad.
What?
Yeah.
Get out of town.
Yeah, I found out on Monday.
Well.
Yeah.
We'll be having Carlos Jr. on in a few weeks.
So some more synthesizer nerds for the world.
Congratulations.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Well, no shortage of surprises on Talking Synths.
Yeah.
Well, then we better let you go, and and we'll then bid everyone
modulator.